This story will leave you speechless. You won't believe what this loyal dog did to save his owner, what really happened that day. Watch until the end. You'll be shocked. But before we continue, comment below how you think this story will end, hit the like button, and subscribe if you love incredible stories like this. Light rain fell in smooth, rhythmic waves, covering the pavement with a slippery, shimmering sheen under the dim glow of streetlights. Inside a parked police car on a deserted road, Officer Liam Harrison adjusted his tactical vest, glancing briefly at his partner, Rex. The German Shepherd sat alert in the passenger seat, intently scanning the surrounding area. They had responded to countless calls together, but this time something felt off. The dispatcher's voice carried something unusual, a hidden anxiety that weighed heavily on his chest. Post 12, reports of suspicious activity at the old warehouse on Usson Drive. Possible armed suspects. Proceed with caution. Backup is on the way, crackled over the radio. Liam exhaled slowly, reaching out to pat Rex on the head. We're on our own for now, buddy. Stay ready, he whispered. Every muscle in Rex's body was primed for action. Ahead loomed the warehouse, a dark silhouette against the stormy sky. Its peeling walls and rusted doors stood like silent sentinels. Raindrops, battered by the wind, dripped from the broken roof, creating an ominous, rhythmic tapping in the night's silence. Liam moved forward cautiously, weapon at the ready. His eyes scanned for any movement, his ears tuned to every sound. Suddenly, Liam froze. Footsteps, quick, muffled, barely audible over the rain. Raising a fist, he silently signaled Rex to halt. A tense silence hung in the air, heavy and oppressive. Then, a sharp metallic clang shattered the stillness. Something clattered across the concrete floor. Before Liam could process what was happening, a searing pain shot through his left side. The impact knocked him backward, his vision blurred. He struggled to stay on his feet, instinctively pressing a hand to the wound. When he looked at his fingers, they were coated in warm, sticky blood. His knees buckled and the world spun. He collapsed onto the cold, rain-soaked ground. Pain threatened to drag him into darkness. Rex didn't move. He remained frozen beside his fallen partner, his gaze locked on the shifting shadows ahead. Then they appeared, three figures stepping into the dim light of a distant street lamp. Their silhouettes stood out sharply against the night. One held something in his hand, while the other two exchanged hushed, menacing whispers. Liam tried to speak, but his voice was barely a whisper. "Rex, stay," he managed. But Rex didn't flinch. A low, menacing growl rumbled in his chest, a primal warning that he wouldn't back down. Every muscle in his body was taut, ready to act. His unwavering stance spoke volumes. If they wanted to get closer, they'd have to go through him. Liam was fading fast, but Rex stood ready to face the three alone. What this loyal dog did that night not only changed the course of events, but also proved the unbreakable bond between an officer and his partner. The rain lashed against the wet asphalt, but Rex didn't falter. He stood firm, his paws gripping the slippery ground. His ears were pinned back, focused intently. Just a few feet away, Liam lay motionless. His breathing grew weaker, and the crimson stain on his uniform spread with each agonizing second. He tried to lift his head, to see what was happening, but his strength was slipping away. All he could do was listen. Listen to Rex's steady, unyielding growl, filled with both threat and boundless loyalty. The three strangers hesitated. They exchanged glances, doubt flickering in their eyes. "It's just a dog," one muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Rex lowered himself further, ready to strike. His piercing gaze darted between the assailants, tracking their every move, every subtle shift in posture. He sensed their uncertainty, their hesitation. The rain intensified, drenching the tense scene in an eerie, anxious silence. One of the men stepped forward, moving slowly and cautiously. He extended a hand, as if to show he was in control, but the slight tremble in his fingers betrayed his fear. Rex didn't budge. His eyes remained locked on the man. His body was coiled like a spring. The man froze, then glanced over his shoulder. "We don't have time for this. Grab the cop and let's go," he whispered. Hearing this, Liam mustered the last of his strength to move. His trembling hand faltered, fingers barely brushing the wet pavement. He tried to speak, but only a faint whisper escaped. "Rex!" The word was almost lost in the rain's noise, but Rex's ears twitched, catching the familiar voice. They didn't need words. Their bond wasn't built on commands, but on trust, loyalty, and an unbreakable connection stronger than any order. Rex's growl deepened, a threatening rumble that echoed through the air, warning that he couldn't be ignored. The men shifted uneasily. One of them stumbled under the weight of the dog's fearless gaze. "Forget it. Let's go," one muttered, stepping back. But before they could move, a distant siren pierced the relentless rain. The wail grew louder, cutting through the night like a harbinger of inevitable justice. The men exchanged panicked looks. Their plan was crumbling. Without a word, they melted into the darkness, vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. Rex didn't move. He returned to Liam, refocusing all his attention on him. His loyalty never wavered, his wet fur pressed against his partner's hand. Even through the haze of pain and exhaustion, Liam managed a faint smile. His trembling fingers reached out, lightly brushing Rex's neck in silent gratitude. The sirens grew louder, their echoes bouncing off the empty streets. Help was finally arriving, but Rex didn't budge. He stayed by Liam's side. His presence was a silent vow. No matter what came next, he wouldn't leave. Rescue was near, but what Rex did that night would be remembered forever. His unyielding bravery changed the course of events. His loyalty proved stronger than fear. In the moments that followed, the bond between man and dog was cemented. A bond forged in danger, tested by pain, and sealed by sacrifice. The bright lights of patrol cars pierced the darkness. Red and blue flashes reflected in the puddles. Officers spilled out of their vehicles, weapons at the ready. Their eyes darted, searching for threats. Rex didn't move. His soaked, exhausted body remained tense. He watched every movement of the approaching figures. His sharp gaze never wavered. A low growl rumbled in his chest as strangers closed in on his wounded partner. It was his final act of loyalty, proof that no matter what, he would always stand by, always protect. "Officer down!" A rescuer's voice crackled urgently over the radio. He rushed to Liam, dropping to his knees and quickly assessing the wound. "Hang in there, Harrison," he said firmly, though concern laced his voice. Liam weakly opened his eyes, and for a moment, his gaze met Rex's. Even as his strength faded, he tried to speak. "Rex saved me," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the noise. Rex's ears flattened as medics arrived and began their work. Officer Carter knelt beside him, his voice soft. "It's okay, buddy. He's in good hands now." But Rex barely reacted. His gaze remained fixed on Liam, as if he understood the gravity of the moment. Paramedics worked quickly, applying pressure to the wound before carefully lifting Liam onto a stretcher. "Critical condition, but he has a chance," one assured, preparing him for transport. Rex lunged forward. His paws slipped on the cold metal of the ambulance. He tried to follow his partner. A firm but gentle hand stopped him. "Easy, Rex," an officer said soothingly. "He'll be okay." Rex whimpered softly, pacing anxiously as the ambulance disappeared into the distance. The officers remained on alert. "Let's sweep the area," Carter said, though tension edged his voice. His gaze fell on Rex, who was still restless. His instincts clearly told him the danger wasn't over. Minutes dragged on, the tension mounting. One officer approached Rex with a leash, hoping to calm him. But before he could secure it, Rex suddenly froze. His ears pricked forward, his body tensed. He had heard something, a faint crunch of gravel underfoot. The officers hadn't noticed yet, but Rex had. He barked loudly, sharply turning toward the darkness. Carter instantly focused, his hand instinctively moving to his holster. "What is it, Rex?" he asked. But there was no doubt. Rex had sensed something. The danger wasn't over. The officers exchanged tense glances, their bodies poised for action. Rex's sharp bark cut through the damp night air. His body was taut, ears alert, eyes locked on the shadows beyond the warehouse. Carter tightened his grip on his flashlight, his hand returning to his weapon. "Spread out," he ordered. Rex moved cautiously toward the edge of the area. His nose skimmed the ground, searching for a trail. The rain had soaked everything, but he remained focused. Every step was deliberate. Carter walked beside him, his flashlight cutting through the thick fog. The only sound was the crunch of gravel underfoot. The tension grew. Every shadow seemed suspicious, every distant noise amplified by the silence. "Something's here!" an officer shouted from the edge of the warehouse. Rex turned sharply at the sound and immediately bolted. His tail straightened, signaling the others. The officers followed, their hearts racing as they reached the slightly ajar door. The faint beam of a flashlight revealed fresh tracks in the wet earth, leading inside. Carter raised a hand, calling for silence, and signaled the team to fan out. Rex slipped through the doorway first. His paws silently touched the cold concrete. Inside, it was pitch black, the air thick with the smell of oil and dampness. He moved confidently, nose to the ground, searching for a trail. Then a sound, faint but distinct. Footsteps, muffled, cautious. "Someone's here," Carter whispered. "Careful." His ears strained, catching the slightest shifts in the air. Time seemed to slow. The tension was palpable, every moment stretching endlessly. Suddenly, a figure darted out from behind a stack of crates, bolting for the far exit. "Stop! Police!" Carter's voice cut through the warehouse's silence. Rex instantly sprang into action. His muscles coiled, a powerful burst propelling him forward. The fugitive glanced back, fear flashing in his eyes. He knew he couldn't outrun this. Rex closed the distance rapidly, while the officers took positions to block any escape routes. The only sound was the echoing thud of footsteps in the vast space. The fugitive's panic was evident. His ragged breathing, frantic glances over his shoulder, all betrayed his growing desperation. But Rex didn't stop. His agile body sliced through the air, driven by a single purpose. Behind him, Carter and the team shouted, ordering the fugitive to halt. But it was Rex who led the chase. Reaching the exit, the fugitive yanked the door, but it stuck, screeching against the concrete. That momentary hesitation was all Rex needed. He leapt forward, and in an instant loomed over the fugitive. His fierce bark pierced the darkness like a final warning. The man froze. His hands shot up instinctively, as if surrender alone could pacify the relentless dog. Rex stood firm, his gaze locked on his target. A low growl vibrated in his chest, a warning of his readiness to act. Within moments, Carter and the other officers arrived, weapons drawn. "Don't move." Carter's voice was sharp and uncompromising. "Keep your hands up." The officers swiftly restrained him. Handcuffs clicked into place. The job was done. This time, as the officers began interrogating the suspect, Rex's ears caught a new sound, a faint rustle from deep within the warehouse. His ears twitched, his head snapping toward the noise. Carter immediately noticed the change. "What is it, Rex?" he asked. But the dog didn't wait for a command. With precise determination, he moved forward, quick and confident. Carter signaled the team, and they followed Rex to the far end of the warehouse. The air grew colder. The faint hum of machinery and the rhythmic drip of water from a leaky roof filled the silence. Rex stopped at a slightly ajar door, his nose sniffing the air. "Now it's our turn," Carter whispered. Carefully, they pushed the door open. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness. Inside sat a second suspect, clutching a makeshift weapon. "Hands up where we can see them," an officer barked. The man froze. His fingers tightened around the object, but a moment later, it clattered to the floor. Slowly, he raised his hands in surrender. As the officers secured him, Rex was already alert again. His nose had caught something else. A clear premonition. The night wasn't over. Rex had proven his worth time and again, but as the team prepared to leave the warehouse, he remained on edge. The danger wasn't gone. Despite apprehending 2 suspects, the tension didn't ease. Carter noticed the dog's tension. His eyes darted around the dimly lit warehouse, ears catching every sound. An officer knelt beside him, speaking softly. "What is it, buddy? Did you catch something?" In response, Rex let out a low, confident bark. Then he turned his head toward a far corner of the warehouse. "Rex found something," Carter said. The officers moved forward. Flashlight beams cut through the dark. Rex's nose led him along an increasingly clear trail. Outside, the rain had nearly stopped, but water still dripped from the roof, creating an ominous rhythm in the silence. Approaching the loading dock, Rex suddenly halted. His muscles tensed, a deep growl rumbling in his chest. His eyes locked onto a massive metal container against the wall. Its rusted body had a slightly open lid. The officers exchanged glances. "Something's not right here," one muttered, tightening his grip on his flashlight. Carter moved forward slowly, weapon at the ready. "Cover me," he ordered. Carefully, he used the flashlight to push the lid open, revealing the contents. What he saw made his stomach churn. Inside was a stash of weapons, and beside it, a bag stuffed with cash and multiple fake IDs. "Looks like they had much bigger plans," he muttered, stepping aside to let the others inspect the find. But before the team could fully grasp the scope of the discovery, a sharp sound shattered the silence. A metallic screech, followed by a distinct rustling from above. Rex reacted first. He barked sharply and lunged forward, his gaze fixed upward. Flashlight beams shot toward the ceiling, revealing a figure crouched on a steel beam. "Up there on the beam!" Carter shouted. As the suspect moved, leaping onto a stack of crates in a desperate bid to escape, Rex was faster. Before the man could get any further, the dog charged, blocking his path with a loud, commanding bark. The suspect froze, stunned by the dog's determination. In seconds, the officers surrounded him, weapons drawn. Trapped with no chance of escape, the man slowly raised his hands. His face paled in silent defeat. With all 3 suspects in custody, it seemed the night was finally over. But the contents of the stash hinted at something far more serious than a simple crime. Though the tension in the warehouse eased, Carter noticed Rex remained alert. His gaze stayed fixed on the container the officers had just inspected. "What now, buddy?" Carter muttered, crouching beside the dog. Rex sniffed the air again, then looked back at the container and let out a quiet but insistent bark. Carter exchanged glances with the officers. "Let's take a closer look," he said, pulling on gloves. Carefully sifting through the container's contents, he found a battered, damp folder stuffed with documents and maps. Carter spread them out on a nearby crate, shining his flashlight on the pages. The maps had several locations marked across the city, each circled with dates. "This isn't just a robbery," Carter said grimly. "They were planning something much bigger. These are key infrastructure points. If their plan had succeeded, the consequences could have been catastrophic." A heavy silence fell over the officers as the scale of the discovery sank in. One by one, the suspects were led out of the warehouse. Their faces showed a mix of anger and resignation. The third man, the one who had hidden, shot a venomous glare as he was loaded into a car. "You stopped us today," he sneered, "but it's too late to stop everything." Carter didn't respond. His jaw tightened as he slammed the car door shut. "Thank God Rex was with us," one officer muttered, nodding toward the dog. "If it weren't for him, we might have missed this. Who knows how long it would have taken to figure out what they were planning." Carter ran his fingers behind Rex's ear. "He's not just a partner," he said quietly. "He's the reason we all made it out tonight." As they prepared to leave the warehouse, Carter took one last look around, feeling the weight of the night. Rex sat beside him, finally relaxed, but his sharp eyes still watched their surroundings. "You did great, buddy," Carter said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Liam's lucky to have you. We all are." With a final glance at the warehouse, The team gathered the evidence and headed to the station. That night, Rex had done more than save lives. He had uncovered a plot that could have destroyed their city. As the car drove off, the full scope of their discovery became clear. But the danger wasn't over. A new threat loomed, and once again, Rex would have to prove he was an indispensable hero.